Remember, everyone, Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig was the greatest wrestler to ever live because nobody beats Mr. Perfect. Nobody. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Curt Hennig Was the Best. Changed my mind. I am your host, Steph. Today on our Perfect Podcast, we will start with some background on how I became a wrestling fan. I will also talk about how I came to admire the greatness and perfection that was Curt Hennig. But before we start, I'd like to add if you would like to be a guest on our show or you would like to have a friendly debate, please contact me at mrperfectisperfect0328 That's mrperfectisperfect0328 I hope that over these episodes of this podcast that you will come along and laugh with me as I share my information. I have looked up about my all-time favorite wrestler, Curt Hennig, and why I think he is the greatest to ever live. So first, I'd like to start off with a little background about me. I've been a wrestling fan, so I actually started when I was 4, almost 5, and I remember watching WrestleMania 7 live at my aunt's house, in fact. And the only thing I really remember about WrestleMania 7 was that Liz and Randy got back together. I mean, that was a big thing. The whole crowd was basically in all of the emotion that those two were able to provide. I don't really remember a lot about Kurt's match then because I was only 4 and I wasn't really sure what wrestling was. So that's why I kind of took a break from it. I never really got to know what it was until I became 10. And my mother's boyfriend was watching it. And I remember he didn't like Hogan very much. So it was interesting at the time that I started watching it in 96 when he started watching it too. So I was watching Nitro, and I just remember falling in love with the NWO. I was a big NWO fan, and I sort of watched by myself, alone in my room, and I just remember thinking, "Wow, this is really cool. I think I'm going to really enjoy these shows." So for the next 6 months, because I started watching, I'd say probably around March or April, so like my birthday when I officially became 10, and then when Curt came in June, I remember thinking, oh wow, he's a really cool guy, and didn't even realize that he was the former Mr. Perfect. Because he came into WCW by himself. So for me, that was kind of, I don't know, it was like all-inspiring because I got to learn who he was and that he came in with his own name. So I followed along, and I saw him when he was in the Horsemen. And to kind of reiterate that I think he had some really good matches with DDP. I wasn't a big DDP fan, sorry guys, but I just didn't like Diamond Dallas Page very much. I know that breaks some of your hearts because some of you probably liked Diamond Dallas Page, but I did not. I was not a big Sting fan, or I was not a big Diamond Dallas Page fan. I was more of a NWO fan. I didn't like the Four Horsemen either. I really did not like Arn Anderson. I did not like Ric Flair. I still don't to this day. I'm not really a big Ric Flair fan. I know, guys. Wow, you really didn't like a lot of people, and that's not true. I really like the NWO. I liked Hogan, and I liked Kevin Nash, and I liked Scott Hall, and I liked Six, or Sean Waltman. He was known as the 1-2-3 Kid in WWF. So And when I watched it was WWF, okay? Can we just make that clear? I know it's WWE now, but when I watched it was WWF, okay? Um, because I was really heavily into the Attitude Era, and I was a big Stone Cold fan. Yes, I liked Stone Cold. I didn't like DX. I didn't like Shawn Michaels. Triple H sort of grew on me, but not till later, not till after Austin won the belt at WrestleMania 14. So I know everyone's going to be like, well, what about Triple H? Well, I wasn't much for Triple H at first, but again, he kind of grew on me, and I started liking DX after that. Um, so anyway, getting back to watching it, um, I watched it in '96, and then started watching on my own in '97. And Curt came in July of '97, and I I kept thinking, why doesn't he go to the NWO? I mean, because they were kind of setting it up that way, and I want to say that I kind of had an inkling or a feeling that maybe Curt would go, but when he joined the Four Horsemen there in August, it was it was like the middle or like the end of August of '97. I kept thinking, okay, well, he's in the Four Horsemen. But he surprised us all in September of '97 at Fall Brawl when he actually became a part of the NWO. And like I said, they were kind of directing that towards, like, he was going to go that way. And I just remember thinking, wow, he's a really great wrestler. Yes, I'm a woman, so I will say he was very good looking as well. I think I can get away with that on a podcast. But I was just the way, like I said, the way that they were setting it up for him to go to the NWO was actually kind of all inspiring. They had that NWO where they had that parody, and everyone thought it was funny at the time. Oh my gosh, are you kidding? I like laughed my butt off. I was laughing so hard. I mean, because I was an NWO supporter. So, of course, anything that Kevin Nash did or that, they, Sean Waltman or X Pac would end up going to the WWF and recreating that parody. I know he did a really funny one with when he was in DX. He did it with the Nation of Domination. If anyone remembers The Rock before he was a big, big superstar, he was in the Nation of Domination with Farouk, and there was a bunch of other guys in there too. And if I remember, everyone remembers the Croc. I think this is where Triple H kind of grew on me because at first I didn't like Triple H at all because he was against Stone Cold, of course, and I really grew to love Stone Cold's character because he was like he would thumb his nail at the or thumb put a thumb, he would be a thorn in the side of the establishment. Let's put it that way. And he I kind of vicariously lived through him, and that's because my family situation, I kind of saw Stone Cold as a hero. It was a little later that I saw that Curt was kind of doing the same thing when he went to the NWO. He's kind of thumbing his nose um, at authority, and I mean everyone expected the NWO. Oh, they went against tradition. Well, that's what they were there for. That they were supposed to go against authority. That's what. I mean, how could you not think that the NWO would break all the rules? Well, I mean, that's who they were. That's what they stood for. They were supposed to thumb their nose up at the establishment and the tradition sense. Um, but anyway, when Curt turned, I was like, aha, I knew this was going to happen. And then he went on to join with his longtime best friend, Rick Rude, who I have tremendous respect for. He was also a great wrestler, just like Curt. I know they were very, very close. Whenever you would see Curt, you would see Rick to. And that was really cool that they got to, Rick was kind of the manager, and I've heard several podcasts. I used to listen to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, no plug there. But I used to listen to him, and he would say, Rick really wanted to get back into it. And I know from reading Bret Hart's book that Bret Hart and Curt Hennig and Rick Rude, they all kind of hung out together. They were like really good friends, all of them. And when the screw job happened in '97 November, um, I remember that on 83 Weeks, Bischoff kind of admitted, Rick didn't ask me to come back. He said, I'm coming back. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I was kind of shocked. But when you read Bret Hart's book and you learn about, Rick Rude and his relationship with Curt and his relationship with Bret, you kind of get a sense of, okay, they were all friends. They all hung out, that they liked hanging out together, and they were, really good friends. So, in '98, after, I think it was the Nitro after Starcade when Curt lost the belt, he kind of disappeared, and it was due to injury, and he also went to Japan. So, because if you go to on Peacock, again, not a plug, but if you do subscribe to Peacock and you watch the kind of wrestling that I grew up with, which is like the late 80s, I'm talking like 88, 89, into the early 90s and into the late 90s with the Attitude Era in WWF, and of course with Nitro in 96, 97, 98, you will see the September 15th episode of Nitro. Curt comes back, and the commentators were like, oh, he was in Japan just, less than 24 hours from, then. And his first match back was against Bobby Eaton. So I always wondered what Curt would say when he, came back from Japan and he got to face Bobby Eaton. And of course, Wade Boggs, who is, I watched the Life and Times of Mr. Perfect, and Wade Boggs and Curt were actually extraordinary friends. And if you actually watch that DVD, you learn that Curt actually carried Wade Boggs. That apparently Wade had hurt himself, and Curt took it upon himself to say, well, I guess I'm going to have to carry you to the hospital, as Wade remembers it. And him and Curt were very, very close friends. And I think that's really sweet, that Curt was such a great person out, like out of his character on wrestling. He was an awesome person. And I have yet to find an interview where they say, oh, he was a total, dickhead. I don't like him. He was an asshole. Um, I haven't found that interview yet. All the interviews I've heard or seen about Curt Hennig outside of the ring would be that he was a great guy, he was a great person, he loved his kids, and yes, that he loved to rib. In fact, maybe in my next episode or my next couple episodes, I do have an interview with Jesse Ventura that I did over something called Clubhouse, which I was on YouTube and I saw an interview with Tyrell, who is Jesse's son. And if you'd like to join the Clubhouse, I guess this is a plug for them, but you can join. It's really easy to join. And it's called The Office is Open, and it's with Jesse and it's with Tyrell. And I got to talk to Jesse off script, so to speak. But it was really interesting, and it was great. He had great stories about Curt. And it was just a great interview. Like I said, that's to come, more to come. So just be patient with me. This is the first episode. I didn't want to really go into the interview with Jesse just yet. I wanted to just kind of tell you a little bit about me and a little bit about my background, um, and how I started to like Curt Hennig. So in 98, like I said, Curt was with his best friend, and he did have a match against Bret Hart, and a lot of people said that match was not what it was expected. And it's because, Curt and Bret were both older and they had so many injuries, and just pretty much, if I can put it to what Bret would say, is that, we were older, we had a lot of injuries, and we just maybe weren't on our game that time. But at Uncensored 98, which is a WCW pay per view, if you'd like to go look that up on Peacock, they have it. Trust me, I watch it all the time. It's a great match between Bret and Curt, I think. And everyone has their opinions, so if you don't think it's a great match, it's probably because, again, they were a little older and they had, many injuries in the past. Curt hurt his back in 91. And everyone remembers the match from 91, the SummerSlam 91 match. Everyone remembers that between Curt and Bret. And if you read Bret Hart's book, which I have, he praises Curt up and down on that match. He basically said it was spy versus spy every time he would face Curt, because he knew Curt would take care of him, and that he could try new things with Curt, and they weren't going to do stupid things, that they weren't supposed to do. So he praised Curt because, as Bret put it, Curt's back was so agonizing that all he could do was fish. And reading that, I was kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. um, but then the SummerSlam, the match itself, Curt had back spasms, so I'm guessing he was on some kind of painkiller to at least help with that. But even Bret admits Curt gave his all for the fans and for Bret himself. And it was Curt's idea for Bret to tear off his singlet and, hold it up as a trophy. So, I mean, kudos to Curt. He, wanted to do this for his friend. And Bret was, Bret and him were pretty close. Not as close as him and Rick Rude, but he was still good friends with Bret. They came from similar backgrounds. They were both second generations. So, to be honest, looking back at that match, it is hard to watch if you're a big fan of Curt Hennig's, which I am, because he looks like he's in pain. And when you hear the background on it, that he was having back spasms, you kind of get, yeah, okay, that makes sense, Um, but the one at Uncensored, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Apparently, Curt had gone to whoever, Bischoff, I'm guessing, and said, I never really beat Bret Hart, yes, but that's because he could sell as a heel. He could make it, as Jim Cornette likes to say, and I am plugging Jim Cornette because I do listen to his podcasts. So, hi, Jim. um, as Jim Cornette puts it, he could sell his ass off as a heel, and he could, get heat. He really got heat when he, at the end of the match, he lost the match, but he could get so much more heat if he actually took Bret Hart and just, pummeled him at the end with Rick Rude. Where and Bret could sell it too. Bret could be the ultimate baby face and sell it as, oh, Curt's really hurting me, that kind of thing. And Rick Rude's helping him. So, and the whole angle they did with the British Bulldog and Davey Boy Smith, Davey Boy Smith and Jim Neidhart, excuse me. Um, the angle that they did where they would handcuff. I mean, Rick Rude actually had handcuffs that he would handcuff the British Bulldog and Jim Neidhart, and that was to get more heat. It was so that Curt could get more heat, and Rick Rude too. I was watching an interview they did about Rick Rude, and to my surprise, Rick Rude was actually a babyface back in like '81. And I was like, Rick Rude, a babyface? I can't see it, because we were so used to, the ravishing Rick Rude, the guy that would come out and shake his hips and, or as I like to say, he would shake his dick at you. um, and he was just that heel that loved to get heat, and yet all the women seemed to adore Rick. Um, I'm guessing the heat came from most of the guys because they were, not as built as Rick was. Rick was built, but I think Curt was built better. That's just my opinion. You may have a different opinion if you're a big Rick Rude fan. I've also heard interviews where Stone Cold talks about Steve Austin, talks about Rick Rude and how Rick Rude would smoke weed. So, and and Rick Rude would swear like a sailor. Apparently, all wrestlers swear like sailors. They're just a bunch of guys hanging out, and it's a boy club, as from what I've been told. So it's not surprising to me. The funniest thing I think I heard about Rick Rude was that he wasn't a hunter; he was more of a fisherman, and he went hunting with Steve Austin and got the wrong bullets for a gun. If you have never heard some of these interviews, I urge you to go onto YouTube, not a plug, but go onto YouTube and just look up funny stories about Rick Rude, which are also how I'm going to go into a segue about Curt and his ribs, because I found out that Curt was a big ribber. And some of the stories that you hear, even if you look up, Curt Hennig's ribs, on YouTube, if you look some of that stuff up, I guarantee you're going to laugh as I did. Especially the one from Scott Norton where Curt was pooping in a bucket because he had eaten Butterfingers and eggs, hard-boiled eggs and Butterfingers and X-Lax. I urge you to go to YouTube and look some of this stuff up yourself, because I guarantee you're going to laugh. I think one of my favorites was it's a tie between Pat Tanaka's, where Curt threw a match on his car because he had poured motor oil on the window, or on the windshield and on the windows, and Curt went by and set his car on fire. That one, and the Shane Douglas one, where Shane Douglas says that they were on a plane and apparently Curt puts what looked like chocolate on this guy's glass, and the guy asked for another glass because he said the glass tasted like shit. So I urge you, if you're a Rick Rude fan, or you love Curt Hennig, or you love to hear funny stories, or funny ribs, if you will. Um, Another good one was Barry Darso said about Curt had given him his dad's trunks, but he never told his dad that he had given them to Barry Darso. So again, I urge you to go to YouTube and look some of this stuff up for yourself if you're really into, the kind of ribs that they would pick on it, with each other. And a good one was Shane McMahon said that they would put a bucket of water above the door, and when you open the door, you would get doused with water. I could see Curt doing that. And then, laughing about it later. So, um, but anyway, as we get later into 98, um, of course, you had the split of the NWO. We had the NWO Wolfpack, which was okay. Curt was in there briefly, and then I'm guessing according to Eric Bischoff, he didn't have a plan for Curt. So he kind of made Curt go back with Rick Rude to NWO Hollywood, which was Hogan's side. Um, I don't really have a feeling about the NWO Wolfpack. I just know that they were okay. Um, but the NWO was kind of a split there for a while, and then, Curt and Rick went back to NWO Hollywood, and I just kind of, more or less, I thought that they were just cool. They were cool together. Like, you could tell that they were, best of friends, and they hung out a lot, and they were just so cool. Like, you would do anything just to hang out with them because they were just so cool the way they were. So as we get into 99, of course, everyone knows that Rick passed away. He actually passed away on my birthday, April 20th, 1999, and I turned 13 years old, and poor Rick passed away. I don't know how to feel about that because I do like Rick Rude. I respect him as a wrestler and as a person. But I'm not really a big fan of Rick Rude. I mean, I kind of was because he was a friend with a Curt friend, but I mean, he was a great wrestler. So I do respect him as a wrestler, and I respect him as a person. And around that time, it was late April, early May, and Curt starts talking about about country music, and I can remember thinking at the time, I didn't know he liked country music. I honestly did not know that. Apparently, yes, Curt has always loved, country music. He loved Hank Williams Sr., and he liked George Jones. And if you watch some of the July, like June, like late June, July 99, where he's with, the Texas rednecks, West Texas rednecks, he mentions about, Mark Chestnut being in the audience, and he mentions Alan Jackson. I don't know if that was just a rib or if that was real, like they really were in the audience, but I was like, wow, I like Mark Chestnut. I like Alan Jackson. I like Mark Wells. So it was kind of interesting when he started going into the West Texas Rednecks and they made that song, and they always had that song playing as their theme. So of course I learned all the words to Rap is Crap. Yes, we're going to talk about Rap is Crap. I didn't at the time. I I really loved the song only because I loved country music myself, and I was really heavily into country. I mean, I still am. I just don't listen to a lot of new country. I listen to a lot of the older country that I grew up with. So, to be honest, I'm kind of like Curt in that aspect. But there is and I urge everyone to go look at it. There's an interview that was done. Curt called into a radio station and was asked if he hated rap music. And he said he did not. He did not hate it. He actually liked all music. And I wish everyone would see that interview because in some people's aspects, he was a baby face. So if you liked country music, Curt and the West Texas Rednecks, and you hated rap, obviously, they were baby faces to you. So they were good guys. If you hated rap, I'm sorry, if you hated country and you liked rap music, then I guess you could see them as heels. But really, that was when the balance, so to speak, switched between the two. Curt kind of, you couldn't really tell who a bad guy was or a good guy was. So that kind of was over. And I would say that really took effect, especially with the Attitude Era and Stone Cold, where Stone Cold was supposed to be a heel, but he turned into like one of the biggest baby faces. Everybody knows who Stone Cold Steve Austin is, if you know wrestling, if you know older 90s wrestling or the Attitude Era. So, to be honest, the song Rap is Crap would always get stuck in my head. I learned all the words to it. I really admired that song. And they actually would, I don't know if they went out on tour. I don't know, again, if that was just part of the storyline or if they actually did go out on tour. But that, I could see him being, a country singer. And I almost like, why didn't he make the switch? I think he would be a great country singer. Curt would, because Curt sang all the lyrics, and I, I just honestly think he would have made a great singer. Even the interview they did with Conan about Curt, Curt wasn't really into it at first because he thought he should be higher on the card, and Conan told him not to worry about it, just to go out there and they'll just have fun with it, and it just kind of, even Curt admits that it just kind of dwindled because someone with blonde hair said, I can't follow that, brother. Um, so it makes you think that, certain people said, we got to cut this out because you're getting too good. That kind of stinks because I would have loved to seen him transition into a singer. I think Curt would have been a great singer. And I think he could have, topped the charts with country music and his love of it. I even heard that they did a special on Curt around his birthday last year, 83 Weeks, Eric Bischoff. If you want to look it up on YouTube, the title is Curt Hennig. Um, they actually talked about that he had his own place in Memphis at a country bar or something. He actually had his own seat and like his own place that he could go and just, relax, I guess. So that's actually kind of interesting that, he really enjoyed country music. And again, I can, you know, relate because I loved country too at the time. And I really did like Rap is Crap. It was one of my favorite songs that I have to say that came out of wrestling. Even if Curt would, if he were here today and said, "Oh no, no, I couldn't see myself as a singer," I think we could have talked him into it. Like, yeah, you should definitely go out on tour and you should write all these songs and you should sing them. I definitely think he would make a great singer. So in '99, he had the Rap is Crap, and then you kind of see him kind of disappear again. And he says in this interview that was done in 2000, I think it was late 2000. Again, I implore you to go look it up on YouTube. It is a great interview that he called into a radio station with, and they asked him great questions about Bret Hart and about Jesse Ventura. In fact, I talked to Jesse about that. So again, there are good things that are going to come in more and those episodes in more episodes. So like I said, stay tuned because we're gonna have great things coming, like my interview with Jesse Ventura, and also I'd like to get a couple of fans in to friendly debate me, and also some just wrestling fans who just want to remember Curt and think he was good or the best, like me. So, getting back to Curt's career, again, he sort of disappeared after, um, 2000. He was there in April and he was going to do an angle against Shawn Stasiak, who was going to call himself the perfect one. And I think this is my opinion. I don't know really what happened behind the scenes. There is an interview they did with Shawn Stasiak about Curt. So if you want to go check that out on YouTube, go ahead. And he just talked about how, Curt and him were friends. Their fathers knew each other. So Shawn Stasiak was uh, a second generation as much as Curt was. Because, he talks about how Curt would try to make him laugh. Um, So I definitely would, I would recommend that you go check out that interview. But around that time, I think, and this is again my opinion, I think that Curt kind of, I don't know if he handed over the reins to Sean Stasiak, but it kind of seemed that way. Like he even came out to, Curt's old music, Mr. Perfect music. If you actually watch his little feud with Sean Stasiak, you will hear the Mr. Perfect theme song come out of the speakers, and here comes Sean Stasiak. So I don't know, it seemed to me that it was like a passing of the torch. Like Curt said, yeah, you should be the perfect one, and we'll have like a little feud, and you'll be the heel, and I'll be a baby face. And Curt was a great baby face, by the way. In '93, I actually went back and watched his whole baby face run. In '93, well, it was '92, '93. Oh my gosh, you talk about a great baby face. Curt was the best. He was a great heel, but I think he was even a better baby face. He just, he wowed me with his baby face run in '93. And you talk about getting a fan for life. He, I mean, that babyface run was really good. I loved the angle he did with Shawn Michaels and Sean Waltman. He kind of protected Shawn against Shawn Michaels and Diesel, who was Kevin Nash. I really liked the angle that Curt did with Shawn Michaels. When you watch them, um, when you watch, because Curt's the baby face and Shawn's the heel, as much heat as Shawn got, you could definitely tell that Curt was helping him through that, talking him through it. And I definitely love the baby face angle with Lex Luger. I wasn't a big Lex Luger fan. He came in as the narcissist. Wasn't a big fan of the narcissist. Um, and of course, he had the angle with Bobby Heenan because he turned his back supposedly on Bobby Heenan and company. And of course, he took Ric Flair out of the WWF. It was a loser leave town match. Um, I just think that his babyface run could equal or even be better than some of his heel runs. I mean, because he was Mr. Perfect, in the WWF. He was Mr. Perfect. He could do it all. And really, I found out that stemmed from the fact that he was a great athlete in real life. Curt was a great athlete in real life. And so you got to see, Curt Bowl, but then when you go behind the scenes, Bruce Pritchard, who I recommend you watch his Mr. Perfect. Uh, I don't think it's called The Life and Times, but it's definitely, and he talks about Curt and what happened. And some of the funny things, I think Curt maybe just did it to rib Bruce, but they actually had to tell him that they weren't filming, and then he could get everything. Because when they were filming, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. That's, again, I think that was a big rib, because he was ribbing Bruce. I mean, because Curt was a big ribber. So I honestly think he just did it to be funny. Like, oh, shoot, I missed. I guess we'll have to do another take. I could see Curt doing that. Um, from what I have heard about Curt, outside of the ring and how everyone admired him, there's a great interview, if you can find it, with Paul Roma, how when they turned Paul Roma heel, he wasn't really feeling it. And Curt kind of took him aside and said, just go out there and pretend like the world owes you something. Go and be the biggest, meanest person you can be. And Paul said it felt so good. And when he came back, Curt asked him, now, how did that feel? And Paul Roma said it felt really good. He said, yeah, don't listen to anybody else. Just listen to what I have to tell you. And from what I gather, that was pretty much Curt's way, is that he, would take people under his wing and make them feel comfortable if they didn't feel comfortable. So, like, if some guy wasn't feeling his character, I think from what I know and what I've heard, Curt would pull them aside and kind of coach them and make them believe it, which is something that makes a good superstar. And I mean, if you listen to some of the interviews that they talk about Curt, there's one by Steve Austin where Curt pulled him aside and introduced him to Kevin Dunn. And it's something that Stone Cold will never forget about Curt Hennig, because it was something that he didn't think Curt would do, but he really gave him a leg up in the business. And if you hear Austin, the way he talks about it, such admiration for what Curt did for him. You know, because he would say, "Oh, I was competition." When I don't think Curt saw him that way. I don't think Curt saw anyone that way. I think Curt wanted people to succeed, and if you were struggling, he would help you. That's, like I said, just what I gather from all the interviews and all the, whenever people would talk about Curt. I think the number one thing that Curt wanted to do was to make, wrestling a successful business. And Curt was on board for a lot of his friends and a lot of the wrestlers to succeed. And again, if we go back to 2001, you don't really hear from Curt after he kind of leaves WCW and that whole Shawn Stasiak angle behind. He did do the radio interview. Again, I implore you to look it up on YouTube. It's a great interview that he does. You get to hear like the real Curt Hennig, the guy behind the mask, the guy behind the character. And you talk about, he loved to joke around, he loved to laugh, and as the wrestlers put it, or his friends would put it, he was full of life. He was full of laughter, and he had a great sense of humor. So I implore you to listen to it. You could just look up, radio interviews with Curt Hennig. And then all of a sudden, Curt shows up in 2002 at the Royal Rumble, and it's Mr. Perfect all over again. And I have to say, I was sort of getting tired of wrestling at this point. I officially didn't stop watching wrestling until like 2004 when I started going to college. I mean, I graduated from high school in 2004, and I actually just stopped watching it at that point. I just wasn't interested anymore in it and the storylines. His, I don't know, angle, I guess you could say, he was trying to recreate the Mr. Perfect character again in 2002. And of course, everyone remembers or has heard of the plane ride from hell. My thoughts on that is that I think Curt took the fall, even though he really didn't do anything wrong. And they've interviewed the people that were on that plane, and I mean, they admitted that Curt really didn't do anything. He really didn't do anything that no one else had done. There was a plane ride where Kurt Angle and Vince McMahon were, roughing it up. So, in my opinion, I really don't like to talk about the plane ride from hell, because I don't think Curt was seen in a good light. I think he kind of took the blame for everything, and I don't think that was fair to him or Brock. Nothing really happened to Brock, but Curt was let out of his contract, and there is an interview, I don't remember what it's really called, but there is an interview that they did right after the plane ride from hell, and Curt kind of says, "Oh, well, it wasn't anything to do with that. It's just that they didn't really have a spot for me, or they don't have anything for me at this time." So I think he kind of played it off as, "Oh, well, Vince just told me there's really nothing for me right now." So, but if you see him in TNA, it was like late 2002 when he went to TNA and started, an angle. He started one with Jeff Jarrett, who wasn't a big Jeff Jarrett fan, but I think Jeff Jarrett really admired Curt because his Good Old Boy song that they came out with in '99, it was after Rap is Crap. I They said Jeff Jarrett used it as his theme song, so that was kind of interesting. Um, I do listen to Jeff Jarrett's podcast. I just I'm kind of waiting to hear what he says about Curt. I'm not really sure how to get a hold of him, but I would love to ask him what he thought about Curt Hennig. Um, just, from a wrestling standpoint, um, I'm sure Jeff Jarrett, being second generation himself, would say that Curt was a great person. And as I said, all the other interviews I've done, or the interview with Jesse, he said Curt was great. All the other interviews I've heard, they have also said that Curt was larger than life, and I can see it because he played such a believable person on wrestling that you actually believe what he said and what he was going to do. And one of my favorite things that he would say is, and Hulk Hogan, you can't do that. And some of those vignettes were pretty good. um, he played horseshoes. He was really good in them. So the TNA, when he did TNA, you kind of get the sense that he wasn't feeling it. Like he wasn't sure if he really wanted to do it, but he's a wrestler. His father was a wrestler, he was a wrestler, his son was a wrestler. A lot of people, I'm sure, know who Curtis Axel is, and Joe was his. If you actually watch The Life and Times of Mr. Perfect, Joe talks about how he admired his father, and I could see why he did, because Curt was just a great guy in and out of the ring. He knew exactly what to do. He wasn't going to hurt. As the wrestlers say, it was like a night off with Curt, because he knew exactly what to do. You weren't going to feel anything. And he was the artist of perfection. I think he took his wrestling to the next level, even if he didn't think it was a good match. I still think that his matches in AWA, which you can find them on YouTube if you look up Curt Hennig AWA. I think a lot of his, and even some of the matches with his father, I think were definitely grade A. And I think Jesse would agree with me, and you're going to hear that in the interview. Jesse Ventura would definitely agree with me. um, I remember we had just moved to, I think it was like almost a year, and we had been in the apartment that my mom had in, and I heard of Curt's passing. I didn't think much of it at the time because I sort of wasn't a fan of his until, I mean, I knew who he was, and I liked the fact that he loved country music. And he did Rap is Crap, of course. But I sort of felt indifferent about his passing. And it, wasn't till, I became a true fan that I'm just very sad of his passing. His passing, it was just a loss of the world. And I think a lot of people missed out on, oh, what's Curt Hennig up to? Um, I know his children would say, I know Joe said that they really admired him and they loved their dad. He was a great dad. And it was the Stone Cold interview where he had talked about, you could only stay mad at Curt for like 15 minutes and then you had to forgive him. So I could see him definitely being that kind of person outside of the ring. And his passing really saddens me every time I think about it. Because I think we missed out on a great opportunity to learn more about him. Um, see him as Bret Hart saw him, or as his friends saw him, or you know, he would show a different side, I'm sure, to his friends than he would his kids. So I definitely think that I'm more saddened now by his passing in 2003 than I was when I heard of it happening. And it's not affected me, but like, I think of all the things he could have been, guest host or not guest host, but like guest GM. He could have been like a guest GM on Raw or SmackDown, just like Bret Hart was. I think he would have made a great GM, or even if he went back to commentating. Um, there are some rumors, I don't know how true they are, that Curt was trying to make another run for the WWF before his passing. I don't know really if that's true, because I mean, I'd like to believe it's true, but I don't think it's true, because I think that Curt just thought it was done, it was over. And I don't know his mindset, but I would have loved to have met him in person. I would have loved to have gotten to know him as a person and as a friend. And I just think that if there was one thing I could say to Curt, it would be, you are such a great wrestler. You are the greatest wrestler to ever live. And that's my opinion. And whether you agree with it or not, I mean, you have to say the man was great. He was a great person out of the ring, and super duper nice, I was told. But I think it hits me harder of his passing now, because I wish I could have met Curt. Um, I wish I could have met him in person and gotten to know who he was, and because he sort of become a hero to me too. That it was okay to like wrestling, and it was okay to like country music, even though, people have their opinions about all that stuff. But being a girl and, watching wrestling as I did, a lot of people make fun of you for that. And I think Curt would say, don't listen to those people. They're mad because, you know, you're a good person and you like something that they don't. So I honestly think that if I had met Curt in person, I think that him and I would also be very good friends. Because he was from all the interviews I've heard, he was such a great person. And that's pretty much my background and why I started liking Curt Hennig. He's just a great person. He gave every match his all. I really truly believe that, because he wanted to be like his father, who also gave his all. And I still want to know what bear hunting with a switch is. um, so I hope you enjoyed this little montage. And again, there are good things to come, so stay with us. We have interviews with Jesse. We're going to have interviews with other people, with friends and fans. So if you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can download this podcast, or you can catch me on YouTube. I also have it started on YouTube. You can like the video, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Mr. Perfect is Perfect. And again, if you would like to be a guest, you can always contact me at Mr. Perfect is Perfect 0328 at gmail.com. If you would like to be a guest speaker, or if you like a friendly debate. This is episode 1, and I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, remember, nobody beats Mr. Perfect. Nobody.